Hello, our group is Aaron LaGraize, Crisjo Jaimon, Antoine Newman, Raven Mouton, and Paul Cupit, and this is our Petty 1010 project on Indonesia. Today we will be talking about the location, history, companies, exploration, production, consumption, oil and natural gas, trade, liquefied natural gas flaring, economics, and the future of oil and gas in Indonesia.
Indonesia is located in Southeast Asia, sitting between Malaysia and Papua New Guinea. It's located near the Indian Ocean and Banda Sea. Portuguese traders desired to acquire sole possession of the diverse selection of spices that were found in the group of islands within Indonesia called Maluku. Since 1871, Indonesia has been searched for oil, starting with the Netherlands government decision to colonize the country. Until World War II, the Dutch were the most powerful force in Indonesia. The Japanese proceeded to drive them out and gain control of the nation. When the Japanese surrendered at the end of the war, Indonesia officially gained its independence in 1945. Oil began to be commercially produced around 1885, which led to the formation of the Royal Dutch Company for Exploration of Petroleum Sources, which merged with Shell Transport Trading Company, resulting in the establishment of Royal Dutch Shell. For the first half of the 19th century, Royal Dutch Shell dominated Indonesia's oil industry. Caltex, a merger between Chevron and Texaco, developed the two most vital oil fields in central Sumatra, the Duri and Minas fields.
The exploration of oil and gas in Indonesia began on the island of Java around 1872 by Dutch geologists. The Great Discovery led to many more wells and fields discovered in East Java and South Sumatra. The first offshore drill discovered in Indonesia was in the year of 1968, which had a flow rate of over 2,600 barrels per day. With oil fields maturing and a downtrend in discoveries of new reserves, Indonesia's oil exploration was slowing down. Pertamina and ExxonMobil's last significant oil discovery was the Sipu find in 2001. With no significant oil discoveries in western Indonesia, the government hopes that eastern Indonesia and deep sea areas contain large oil reservoirs. Annual oil production peaked at over 600 million barrels per day in the late 1970s. The prices and production continued to increase till 1982, when it reached a low of 460 million barrels because the oil market began to weaken. BP's reports showed that Indonesia's crude oil production fell from 1.39 million barrels per day in 2001 to just 942,000 barrels per day in 2011. Indonesia produced 911,000 barrels per day of petroleum and other liquids in 2014, ranking as the 22nd largest oil producer in the world, and accounting for about 1% of the world's oil production. Oil production in Indonesia continued to decline in 2014 as there were no major new production projects to offset declines at older fields. Indonesia ranks 17th in the world's oil consumption, consuming almost 1.7 million barrels per day. The internal growth for the demand of energy and the decline in production of oil because of matured wells transformed Indonesia from a net exporter to a net importer of crude oil.
Marcus Samuel and Henry III pushed Indonesia to the forefront as a global competitor for the production of oil. They had a critical role in the development from Russian oil to Indonesian oil. The state electricity company is the largest domestic gas consumer of Indonesia, and the Perusahaan Gas Negara (PGN) is the largest natural gas transportation and distribution company in Indonesia. The Indonesian government intends to set boundaries on the country's gas export in a strive to ensure domestic supplies while attracting consumption of natural gas. Declining oil production and increased consumption resulted in Indonesia becoming a net oil importer in late 2004. Indonesia has many geological basins which persistently offer ample oil and gas reserve potential. Less than half of the total oil basins have been extensively explored. Regardless of Indonesia's power endeavors, it is still ranked 8th in the world's natural gas production. Finally, Indonesia is the top palm oil producer in the world, even though it isn't substantial in producing crude oil. Palm oil is the most profitable vegetable oil crop, producing more oil than any other major oilseed.
Historically, Indonesia has had an economy that was mainly based around agriculture, which included fishing, rice farming, and some rubber and palm oil plantations. However, in more recent years, their economy has expanded to include extracting fossil fuel resources such as oil, natural gas, and coal, manufacturing textiles, and producing computer components. In order to develop their trade policies, Indonesia has enacted new laws relating to agriculture, mineral and coal mining, and tourism. One of Indonesia's main trade policy points is the tariff, although it accounts for around 4% of Indonesia's total tax revenues. With new trade regulations and laws, Indonesia has been able to positively affect their export of oil and natural gas. Indonesia contains the third largest gas reserve in the Asia-Pacific region and has supplied about one-third of the world's liquefied natural gas throughout the 1990s. Indonesia used to be the world's largest exporter of LNG, but now they are the fourth largest exporter. Recently, Indonesia has increased domestic usage of LNG. This can become an issue, however, because although Indonesia wants to decrease their export of LNG and increase domestic use, investors who pay for the production of the natural gas only do so expecting the commodity to be exported. Because of the rise in domestic use, Indonesia has actually begun to import LNG. Indonesia is in the top 20 of gas flaring in the world, and by 2011 they have become the world's 12th foremost gas flarer and flare around 350 million standard cubic feet per day. With gas flaring becoming a growing problem in the country, Indonesia has begun to implement laws and regulations to reduce gas flaring emissions. One of the first steps Indonesia has done is implementing some greenhouse gas emission reduction programs. Indonesia has also begun to implement new technologies such as re-injecting the gas into declining heavy oil fields, using the gas for gas lift projects, and converting the natural gas to LNG. Overall, these efforts have done a great job in reducing emissions in Indonesia and reduced about 40% of emissions.
Despite its rich natural resources and great variety of cultural traditions, the Indonesian economy has been underperforming for large periods of its history. Today, Indonesia's economy is recovering, but it is difficult to say when all its problems will be solved. Several times, the Indonesian economy seemed to promise continuation of favorable economic development and ongoing modernization, but for various reasons, the country suffered incidents that prevented further expansions. These incidents often originated in its internal government institutions or its political spheres. Today, Indonesia has an economy that is based on four main industries: the sale of natural resources, the production and sale of agricultural produce, the manufacturing of finished goods, and tourism. These industries allow Indonesia to export goods to other countries and then to import things needed from other countries as well. The largest industries in Indonesia are oil, gas, and mining. They have large reserves of natural gas in Borneo and throughout the rest of the country that provide a lot of money. Also, in Irian they have large deposits of gold and other precious metals that are mined for money as well. The future of the oil industry in Indonesia has potential. However, the country has failed to take advantage of any opportunities to become a powerful, flourishing country. Indonesia's oil reserves could be depleted within 10 to 20 years and its natural gas reserves within 30. Indonesia needs to find other ways to make money other than oil and gas. For example, investing in non-petroleum based industries and also infrastructure investments into the education sector. The country also has substantial proven oil and gas reserves that have yet to be tapped into, and also a large labor force and a political system that is more stable than in the past, add to the potential growth of Indonesia's oil industry.